that maybe the larger, maybe the mother, had the horse by the head and had it under control, and because there were bite marks on the rear of the horse, rear end of the horse, that maybe the younger cat had started to feed. That's just an opinion, of course, but it's obvious from the damage done to that animal that things were going on both ends of it.
Yeah. So you live in California, and I've been out there lots of times seeing those signs about puma. Do you think that's important we have that in South Carolina too?
I'll make an opinion. I'll give you an opinion.
That's all I want.
I think if we consider the facts as best we can, and the facts are that hunting or killing that particular species of animal was outlawed west of the Mississippi some years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I'm thinking it was also done west of the Mississippi. Yeah. Or there was some controls put on shooting that particular animal. If they're territorial, as I understand from what literature I've read and other things that I've watched and whatever, then they require, each individual cat requires a certain amount of geography to survive on. And if you have animals procreating and growing in numbers, then you have to spread out more and more and more. South Carolina right now, particularly the upstate, I can speak to that, living here and being around it quite a bit, is ideal habitat from food sources, water. One of the food sources that has, there are two food sources in particular that have changed in my lifetime, and that is the white-tailed deer populations that have just exploded, and the other thing is this phenomenon of goats. We have more goats in the upstate right now than I believe have ever been in the upstate of South Carolina. So there is a preponderance of food. There's still enough undeveloped territory that a cat can find a place to hide, have a den, whatever. And water is pretty abundant. Even though we've been in a drought, we still are near some large sources of water. So the habitat supports the idea that they're here. There's also evidence, if you dig back far enough in it, and I believe you can do this online, and you can find evidence that there was a federal program in the early 80s to reestablish the indigenous cougar or puma or whatever the right terminology is in the east. Now that doesn't necessarily mean in the southeast, but just in the eastern United States. That was a federal deal that I believe you can find evidence of that if you dig deep enough for it. The DNR people that I've talked to, one of the things that's happened in the state of South Carolina over the last several years is the cost of that department, particularly with the transportation costs that they are faced with. That budget has caused some constraints on that department. I can't speak for them, that's just my opinion again. But one of the things that I think, if I were in that position that, and this was happening like it is, I wouldn't want to admit it because of the demand it's going to place on my department if and when one is publicly on display, has threatened and been killed in a threatening situation, or in worst case scenario has actually attacked a human being. That's just a reality here, and an opinion again. The people that have been willing to comment will tell me, we don't know what's in the woods. There are too many people that will buy exotic animals as pets, and that is legal to do, but they do grow, they do have changing demands, they can get injured or ill. The cost of maintaining one goes up as it ages, and they get too big to handle. Then what do you do with them? If you don't want to destroy it, what do you do with it? Well, you bring it somewhere where you think it can possibly survive and turn it loose. And I think if you were to talk to just about any game warden or whatever, they would probably echo that sentiment, that we don't really know exactly what's out there because of that one phenomenon, if not others.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, really good. Yeah, very good. One more thing. What do you do for profession?
I'll say this, I network market outside of a day job in the county assessor's office. So
Okay.
I'm all over this county as part of my duties in the assessor's office.
How many people in this county do you think have seen?
More than will admit it. And I don't want to give away anything that the farmers around here would probably run me out of town for, but there is a little code here. It's called 3 S's, and that's shoot, shovel, and shut up, because they have a livelihood to maintain, and there are some protected animals or fowl that if they were caught destroying one of them, they could be in a situation to be fined severely, whatever. But some of these things that are protected do damage to commercial livestock under certain circumstances, and that would be something that farmers in that business would need to discuss.
The first thing I want to get out of the way, let's talk about how did you first get interested in cats?
Well, I had a cat encounter back in the summer of 2003. I'm an old gold prospector, and I had leased a good bit of property from the BLM, from the government, and was going about actually it was a weekend deal that I did. I had to work for a living. I was just finding a little gold on the weekends. And we were drilling a hole by hand up on the side of a pretty good sized hill, probably 60 foot from the creek. And we couldn't go to the creek and process the pan, we had to take water to the hole and work with our pans. So I take my 5-gallon bucket, go down to the creek, and the creek was full. I mean, there was a beaver down below us. And this side, you had a creek bank. On the other side, the water was actually going out into the woods, so to speak. Tropical looking, real heavy vegetation. And just as I came out of the water with this bucket, this darn cat, two sounds it made. Kind of a real loud hiss, and then a extremely loud growl. There's no doubt in my mind that was a cat from the first sound I heard, because the cats would make that sound, like it was startled, And I looked up, probably 45, 50 foot above me there, and I looked up, and Steve said, "Bobby, you better get out from down there." I said, "That's one of them big cats." He said, "I see something black." Now, this was heavy canopy in Sumter National Forest. And it was a sunny day, but it wasn't real bright through there because of being so thick with the beech trees and whatever. And so we gathered our pans, backpacks, tools, everything we had, and left walking 3/4 of a mile down the creek, go back to my truck. And it was I don't know, it might have taken half an hour to get there, because I kept stopping, listening, thinking that thing was probably going to come toward me if it had a kitten with it. But basically that's how it got started for me. Tell people about it, "Oh, you ain't heard no cat," nothing like that. And I talked with the DNR, and they said, "Well, yeah, we get calls frequently about people seeing these big cats, but they usually turn out to be somebody's big Labrador or a bobcat or something like that." But then I had people that was telling me tales that had never told it to anybody else. A good friend of mine, a Clemson grad, Mr. Steve Pettigrew, owned a hardware store. He said, "Bobby," he said, "I never told anybody this." He said, "But back in the 70s, I think it was," he said, "there was a big black one crossed the road in front of me between, it's on 81, going toward Calhoun Falls." And he said, you'd be surprised. He said, my mom, now she just recently passed, my mom has had the Greenville News Carrier come to the front door, knock on the door and say, ma'am, Miss Pettigrew, better watch out. Said, I pulled in to bring your paper, and there was a big black cat, panther-like cat, in your driveway. And you get the, and you never know till you ask. You ask every other person you see, especially hunters. And they've either heard of one, or a lot of them have seen them. I've got two sister-in-laws that have seen the black ones here in Abbeville. My stepson and his best hunting buddy, they were turkey hunting up around Anterville, and they saw one. And like I say, this was back in 2003. I haven't hunted the first piece of gold since then because I got, instead of gold fever, I got cat fever. How about that? And I spent a few dollars, cameras. Back then, I just had the 35 millimeter, you know, film, getting developed. Then I started going the digital way. I don't have a picture of that cat yet, but I'm hoping to soon. It's only taken 5 years to get to this point. But I used to put out a couple of them in the same area when I have a sighting and get permission to go out there. I've ordered from a trapper supply out west, cat gland, cat urine, cat passion, and another one they call all 9. It said that the cat would give up all 9 lives just to come to it. I brought some today to show you if you want to see it. But that's, like I say, basically that's how it happened for me. And I have, several books. Cougar Almanac, I don't know if you've ever seen it. Panthers of the Coastal Plain, and others. I've watched every documentary that they have on big cats. There was one on today, matter of fact, on the suburban lions. Okay, it's repeat. I've seen it a few times. But I'm convinced that there's probably, now in Abbeville County, there's like 508 square miles. And I've talked to people all across the county in Abbeville, McCormick, some in Greenwood, Anderson, even over in Elberton, Georgia area. And I'm convinced by the different colors, like rusty, red, dirty, tawny, black, gray, and one even had extra hair on it. And the guy said that thing needed to be in captivity that he had seen. And that was in Abbeville, in the Calhoun Falls area. But from just about every corner of Abbeville County, there's been different ones seen, different sizes. Some of them were pairs. I've got neighbors that had seen a mama and had to be a little one because the little one don't stay with the daddy. I would say that there's 6.3 females in Abbeville and at least 2 males in Abbeville County. And I would say that the females here have probably a minimum of 80 square miles. That they're territorial, and she's got plenty of food, water, and I figure the male's got 200 plus square miles. He's got 3 girls in his territory. And, matter of fact, I'm 64 today, and I had never, and I've been living around here all my life, I'd never heard of it, okay? But I've talked to people that have seen them 30 years ago. I've talked to some folks around in Anterville that started seeing good many sightings after they did the grading and everything for the Richard Russell for the lake. Said they must have been hiding out in the Savannah River corridor down in there. But at the same time, there's been sightings up in North Carolina.
Clemson?
Okay, Clemson. I lost my train of thought. But that's why I say that there's at least 6.3 females here in Abbeville County.
Do you think that the oldest record you've heard of anybody seeing one around here, about 30 years?
Maybe 30 years, yeah.
But much, much more frequent in the past 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what's neat to me about this is that you go back much more than 30 years. You go back 50 years in Abbeville County, Anderson County, McCormick County. Those were pretty different places. And most of these counties were cotton fields back in the 1930s. They had to recover from that. There weren't deer here until relatively recently speaking. Historically, I mean, deer were wiped out here for a long time.
Yeah.
Things have just gotten good again for cats.
Yeah, well, the wildlife folks probably in the late 40s and 50s started restocking the deer, protecting the deer here, you know,
Yeah.
in the east. And yeah, now there's plenty of deer. The deer are plentiful now because they did a recovery with the deer, protecting the deer for probably 30 years. And now there's almost too many deer, but the cougars, you know, they have plenty to eat. They even take a few goats. I've heard of goats hanging in someone's backyard up in the tree, dead goats.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think when you hear people like South Carolina Department of Natural Resources say unequivocally there are no cats in South Carolina, no big cats in South Carolina?